Yeah, so my mentor the other day, he was going over the psychological side of it, of actually being in a trade and not being in a trade. So it's almost as if you're two completely different people, right? So you do your analysis on the chart, you're looking at things, and you find your trade, and even he suggests exercising this. So you'll do it as an exercise, which makes it easier. But what you're doing specifically is you're focusing specifically on, you find your trade you want to try and do, you press the button. As soon as you press the button, your brain is in a very different state. And it's really important to know this, because if you can then track your emotions as you watch price go up. If it goes up, obviously you'll feel elated. If it goes down, you'll start to feel the pain. You track this within your body. You actually track it so you can hardwire this in to your trade. And he suggests exercising this and doing things like exercise chasing price. So he's always telling us that you never put on a trade in the direction price is going. You're always putting in a trade. You're always waiting for the price to come down to your level to get into your trade. So, and to solve this and stop doing it wrong, he suggests chasing price and seeing how it feels emotionally, because it does feel quite horrible when you're chasing it. You feel like, and you track your emotions specifically all the time you're in that trade, and then you get out of your trade. And the reason he says to exercise this, it was kind of interesting. We kind of discussed this on the Discord the other day, and you said an easy way to an easy hack around this was just to lower your exposure. And it's like, yes, you can do that, but then that invalidates the whole purpose of doing this. And I think it's a really interesting exercise to actually physically embody the emotions and understand them and feel them, and actually embed that into your neurology so that you can you feel it quicker. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I mean, I've spoken about the learning process before. I don't know if I've actually spoken it on video before, but as humans, we have two stages to our learning, and they actually reflect directly within the neurology of our brains. So we have neurons in our brain, and they're all wrapped up in they're all wrapped up in all sorts of, you know, it's that thing that we look at as the brain. But you have synapses. So a neuron will be a certain length, and then it'll have a synapse at the end, which is a gap between them. Now, these synapses are really important because it's what allows us to think out of the box and stuff like that. And what you get when you're learning, you're creating connections between these synapses, and electrical and chemical. And this is the part of learning where you're actually focusing and you're very conscious. And it's a very not so much inefficient, but it's very high resource process that the brain goes through to learn. It's you'll find you get tired a lot more quickly. You might need to eat some food sooner while you're doing this. And this is the learning process. When you go through that over and over again, gradually you embody it, and it actually sinks down, and it actually creates an extra layer on the neuron itself. The actual physical layer of the neuron actually builds another layer on top of it. And this is when you actually end up going into the intuitive part of your learning cycle. And it does take a while to do this, but that's what the actual difference is between learning something and actually letting it sink in. And so when you're working on like emotion, and this works to every way we learn. This is how humans learn. And it's very interesting that if you can actually track your emotions, you can build this into your neurology. That when you see a trade or when you see something happening, you can get out of the trade quickly if it's going the wrong way. You can spot it and get out, or you can certainly assess what's going on and know whether you're going into pain for a reason, because you just because you know that it's still going to go the other way, or you still believe it's going to go the other way. But it allows you to get out of the trade quicker, instead of doing what people like me and a lot of people who learning, where we tend to hang on to the trade even though it's going the wrong way, and then we take a much bigger loss.
Does
And
it have does it have anything to do with, that answer Chris H gave it to you?
no, I know this because I'm a therapist and this is what I've studied. So this
Okay.
is my actual knowledge. But the exercise, my mentor was saying to actually. So I just added that bit of how we learn. But the exercise is to it's giving a reason as to why you'd exercise a trade going in the wrong way. Instead of actually putting the trade on, you can do this with paper trading. You're just exercising, but you're actually tracking your emotions. So you're in a trade, you're listening to your emotions, you're seeing what's actually happening. You might only be in that trade for 5 minutes, but you'll do that over and over again. But what my
Hey,
mentor was saying was that if you actually chase price 3 or 4 times, you'll never do it again in your career.
yeah,
You'll actually get it out of your system. And I think exercises like this are really worthwhile
yeah,
to actually
Well,
solve a problem.
kind of my
oh
thought
yeah,
when I hear that is
I
that
get your point.
if you interact with the market, it's generally going to be a learning experience more so when it's a negative experience.
Not necessarily. Yes, actually. So yes, that
Whether
is the case.
it's just like
I
it's just the way that human beings are hardwired, right? We just learn from negative experiences, and
yeah, but it was
whether
We
about
learn,
and
we
it
learn from positive experiences as well. But this is why if you focus on this, just spend an hour in the week or something, do this specific exercise to actually track your emotion and or to try and embed it into your study when you're it can accelerate it because it gives it a purposeful learning. And so what you're actually doing is you're hardwiring these feelings that because we're never going to get rid of the feelings of being in a trade going the wrong way, FOMO, all these sort of things. They don't go away. From my experience talking to people like Crown and Chris H, apparently feelings don't go. It's just they're always there. It's just you learn to manage them. And I'm sure you must know the same. You just learn, obviously, the larger your data set,
well,
the less the charge. But as
well,
students, charge for a trade going the wrong way is very high within
and
our system.
also
That charge electrical
what you're also inadvertently doing when you're doing that exercise, whether you're conscious of it or not, is you're doing an exercise where you're trading contrary of your opinion, right? Because if you're doing the exercise, it kind of implies that you believe that it's a bad idea, right? And that you're going to lose, right? So you're
and not
trading.
necessarily. Well, you have to tailor it to what makes sense to you. I mean, I wouldn't do it that way personally. The way I do it is when I'm just exercising my trade in the morning, I'm putting on a trade that I think is really correct, and then it goes the wrong way. So what I'll do is I'll then track my emotions and go, okay, I will now go into this state where I'm tracking my emotions. And if it goes the right way, I will track my emotions that way too. What I'm saying is I purposely put attention onto my emotions once I press the button.
Well, what I'm saying is, if
I
you if you enter a trade that's contrary, so if you enter a trade that you believe for this exercise, you're inherently saying that you're entering a trade that you don't believe is going to work out, right? Which is a good exercise because it trains you to kind of separate execution from your opinion in a roundabout way.
Yes, yes,
You know what I mean?
oh yes, yes,
Because people
yes.
generally
Yeah.
they look at the market, they do their analysis, then they create an opinion, and then they trade in line with that, and then they're never able to break the link between their opinion and what's actually happening.
Yeah,
So
I mean it's the same with any other learning. So if you're into maths, you have to practice your arithmetic, and you then have to practice your algebra, and then you'll find calculus a
yeah,
lot easier. But you
it
have
kind
to
of
practice
reminds
it.
me of the
Getting that,
exercise I did where I did one where I created a trading idea and then I took the exact opposite trade of whatever my opinion was.
But I think these are all fantastically valid. And they're brilliant exercises. Anything you do on purpose to train your system, I think is worthwhile. I mean, this is all I have at the moment because I'm still not. I'm still finding directional bias really confusing myself. So most of my trades are going in the wrong way. So I'm
Well,
taking advantage that that's happening and hardwiring these feelings into my system so that because one of the things that I'm not doing is I'm not getting out of trades when I should be getting out of trades. And if you take a loss, it takes twice or two, three, 4 times as much effort just to get back to where you were, doesn't it? And I've been
well,
learning that very, very quickly this last week.
yeah,
And that's what
what
I've been paying attention to. I didn't realize you take a loss, you think, oh, it's only 1% loss. No, it's 2% effort you have to put in just to break back even again. And I was like, and I started seeing that in my paper trading, and I'm like, oh Jesus, wow, I've got to stop this. You know what I mean? It just means, oh, I've got to. It gives you that state of mind where it's like, right, I've got to solve this problem. I've got to stop doing that behaviour. But until you actually address it, you'll do it over again. Because I've been doing that same behaviour for a year and a half because I haven't actually addressed it. And until you actually address your bad behaviour, you will carry on doing your bad behaviour because it's coming from a different it's coming from a different psychology within your mind. This is my experience. I don't know if it's anyone else. I'd be interested to hear if it's your experience as well. But I'm really paying a lot of attention to getting out of trades that go in the wrong way because I've never done it, and it was a bit of an eye opener last week when I first when I learned that from my mentor and started being able to track that, and then noticing the big drawdowns when you just take a small hit.
Yeah, for me, when I when I did the exercise where I traded contrary to my opinion, so I did some analysis, and just as an exercise, I traded in the exact opposite direction, right? Took an execution directly opposite to my analysis. And like what I
Yeah.
found on that was really, really interesting, extremely interesting. I didn't expect to find it, but I found that like
Oh wow.
when I did that and I took contrary to my opinion, and then it worked out, right? And the trade actually worked. I was still like experiencing negative emotion, and still unhappy and about that the trade worked out and I was in
Graham's mentioned
profit.
that.
Yeah,
I've heard a few people mention that. Graham's mentioned that in the past.
yeah, and it made me
Um,
realize that you know it's not really about the P&L. Like at least for me personally, maybe
no,
it's different for somebody else.
so this is something else I can talk about as well, but it probably needs a topic of its own. This feeds into the feelings of being right or wrong, which are actually feeling of being right or wrong that they come to us at extremely early age in our history. We're talking around sort of birth conception type area, which I'm not going to talk about here 'cause it's weird. But what I'm saying is it's not something we don't learn to be right or wrong. We experience the feeling of being right or wrong at a pre-verbal stage in our evolution, and that's what makes it so difficult. We all like to be right, and we hate being wrong. And if you tell someone they're wrong in an argument, they'll get fired up, and the argument will get heated. Um, this is a thing and a feeling that we as traders we need to find a solution to. We need to first be able to identify that within ourselves. Some people have it more than others. I have it very, very strongly. Although I don't get heated. I don't mind people telling me wrong. I know deep down inside, if I'm going to be honest with myself, I need to be right. I need to know that I'm an expert in something. I'm very uncomfortable if somebody that tells me I've got something wrong or I've done something wrong because it fires into the threat thing. You know what I mean? It fires into your ideas of survival and just ego somewhere. Do you know what I mean? It's like an ego sort of thing. But trying to find, and this I think for traders is a problem. I think it's a big problem until it can be identified and have the emotional charge around it lessened. Because what you've just said is what tends to happen. So that you'd rather be right and lose money than win money and actually be wrong. And there's quite a few traders I've read that about, and I've actually heard on podcasts say exactly the same thing. It's a really interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, no, it's exactly true. I mean, there's humans have basic needs, right? And the need for certainty is probably the number one. There's other ones. I don't want to go through them all, but they have nothing to do with culture, right? You can go across different cultures, and you'll find them in cultures that are totally different, right? They're like basic human needs, so it's not uncommon.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that you can exercise that, right? You can you can do that, and one other exercise you can do is you can whenever you're hedging a position, right? That's always an exercise in what we're talking about, right? Because that's what that hedge
Right, yeah.
represents, right? A hedge represents an idea.
Oh, of course.
You know,
That's fascinating. Yeah, of course it is.
because when you're hedging, you're casting a vote towards the idea that there's no way to know for sure you're right. So you better put that hedge in.
Mm.
And then when you
Yeah.
do that, and uh, when you do that, you typically tend to be more profitable. At least for me, in my some of my best periods. But also
Well, I think,
kind of the way I think about the markets is if you picture like if you were to like rig a foosball machine and like tilt it slightly the other direction,
yeah.
right, so that the ball just rolls down one side. And there's a slight slope.
Mm.
That's what I think of an edge as, right? You're like tilting your account like that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
which is the opposite of like swinging for the fences, trying
Can
to
I
hit a big home run.
mind if I ask you a question around that exercise? Did you do this exercise more than once? Have you exercised it a couple of times, or did you just do it once and was interested with the result?
I did it a few times. Yeah.
Or you did it 2 times. And did you after? Because it's not an exercise I've done, but it looks like a really good one, and I'd like to try it. Did you find that next time you entered into some trades that there was the emotional charge of being right or wrong was lessened at all? Was it reduced for you? Because this is the purpose of doing it multiple times. It actually does lessen the charge.
Yeah, maybe to some degree. Although I think it mainly made me update my model more than it did anything else, right? I mean, it really my
That's
emotions
even
are
better
still
then, isn't it?
yeah, my emotions are still my emotions. Like those don't really change, but it did make me update my model. So like you guys probably know that, like I break my take profits into a lot of take profits, more than anybody I've ever seen trade. And that's kind of ties along to your idea, right? I mean, it's kind
So
of,
this is
when you think about that, it's like, well, having that many take profits, right? What does that represent on a psychological level? It represents the idea that I'm not trying to pick a point where it's going to stop and reverse, right? It's sort of
so
opening up the possibilities, right, that exist.
yeah. So the interesting thing I find about this is that's a technique of trauma resolution. This is as a therapist, this is what we'll exercise with a client who's got maybe something like PTSD or something like this. What you're trying to do is you're trying to because the way I look at it is like when you get triggered emotionally, you've got information going through your head and information going through your mind, and there's the intellectual side of it. But what you've also got is you've got sort of if you look at that information as like a nerve, if you like, or a pipe or something like that, the emotion is effectively like the insulation around it that shakes, and that the more of that emotion there is around there, the more it shakes, and it's the shaking that's unpleasant. You know what I mean? And so when you've got someone that's got post-traumatic stress disorder for whatever reason, when they get triggered, they'll freak out. They'll freak out, and it will be a real problem for them. What we do when doing trauma resolution is you're trying to reduce that shape. You're just reducing that charge, and it's perfectly possible. And just doing these little exercises is a way of actually reducing. I'm not saying go and do this to reduce some. Don't go and find someone who's got PTSD and start doing that. What I'm saying is it's a good way to actually reduce the emotional charge. You are actually affecting your emotions in a positive way because um, we don't really use our emotions the way they were originally designed anymore because our psychology has evolved, but our physical bodies haven't. And there's some dissonance going on around this, and it seems to me that this is a lot of what we work with as traders. more than anything else, actually. And in fact, it's the people that don't work with this are the ones that fail. Because every trader I've spoken to, psychology is a